Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for tuning in to my weekly guitar blog. It is Saturday, May 28th, 2011. And as usual, here on the guitar blog, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hitting some questions that get sent into my guitar blog website, which is at andrewwasson.com. Some of those questions get featured on my Creative Guitar Studio YouTube channel. Other questions get featured right here on the guitar blog on YouTube, and other ones yet get featured on my weekly podcast that comes out every Monday, and you can check that out on the guitar blog website. Again, that address on the internet is andrewwasson.com. Now let's hit the first question that I decided to take here. Is from Renz. He's living out in the Netherlands, and he wrote in with a question about transcription. So he says, I'm starting to transcribe music, but it seems really hard to transcribe. Definitely songs that use other instruments than guitar. I started to transcribe the intro music from Game of Thrones, the HBO TV series, but something weird is going on there. Also, the instruments make it difficult to hear the notes super clearly. I think the song alternates between C minor and C major, but I'm not sure because it's also hard to find the home chord or root, and the notes of the melody line seem to fit into either C major or C minor depending on the bars. Okay, so let's first of all start off talking quickly about transcription, and then we'll head over to the Game of Thrones TV show theme song, because at first my wife was heavy into the show and she's now gotten me into the show. It's a really great program. But before we go in that direction, let's talk about transcription in general. Now, transcription is a valuable skill of any musician, and I think that the basis for getting you there is, first of all, to start singing scales. And once you can sing major scales and minor scales fairly well, work on your arpeggios, try to target out tones of chords. And when I say that, what I mean is, let's say you work on some arpeggio singing. So I have a G, B, D, F sharp in this G major 7 arpeggio. And by the way, when you're practicing singing, you're just looking at matching pitch. So you can just pick a syllable that feels comfortable to sing, like you could go do, or you could just go da, da, and then match pitch as you go along. So da, 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 da. Do some work like that, match pitch into scales, match pitch through arpeggios, strum a chord, match pitch through the tones of the chord. That work is invaluable. It's super, super great. Now, in getting into pieces to work on transcription with, you could go to classic rock tunes, you could try some AC/DC, you could go into maybe some simple sections of Zeppelin tunes, you could maybe try some, do some Doors, do some classic rock basically. You could also try some nice stuff from the 90s when, there's a lot of pop punk stuff, try and get some of those chord progressions down, some of the simple melodies that were in the background of some of those Green Day songs, Blink-182, even if you don't like that music. I'm not a huge fan particularly of that music either, but I know from teaching it over the years that it's very basic stuff, and it can be fantastic for people just getting their ear tuned into the instrument. Now, aside from that, TV show themes and even children's cartoon themes can be really good to develop, because they tend to see a recurring theme musically happening in those cartoons or TV show themes. And basically, when I was a kid, that's what I did a lot of. I can clearly remember, sitting in the living room with my old clunky acoustic guitar, learning things like, the old Batman TV show theme, I don't know how many people remember that, but that's going back a number of years. I used to learn all those children's themes, those old cartoons and stuff, and it was great ear training. I remember when I was real little, I was even learning them on my parents' piano in the living room. So take that to heart, because that's really valuable stuff. Now, before we wrap up, I got to mention Game of Thrones. Renz, you were really close on that, because I think you said there that it was, you said you thought it was either C major or C minor. The theme is 100% C natural minor. It is completely Aeolian mode, so go around maybe around 3rd fret position. You'll be able to find all the melodies in there. Now you're going to hear it shifting from the focal point being off of the C there, you'll hear it shift down. It goes into a little bit of a B flat sound, so it's kind of like a little bit on that B flat mixolydian color, but then it definitely comes back into the C Aeolian mode, natural minor scale, and it is very firmly rooted off of the C, and it is definitely natural minor. And from what I remember about that melody, it hasn't even got any harmonic minor flavors or anything. It is 100% Aeolian mode. So there you go. There's a good tip for you on getting the Game of Thrones HBO TV series theme together, and hopefully that helps you out. Now, let's go to the next question. Okay, so it is coming at us from Raul out in Romania, and he wrote in saying, I've recently stepped into the realm of tapping, more specifically into the world of arpeggio tapping, and I have some questions regarding all of this. First, besides the basic major and minor, what other arpeggio types should I try to cover in order to help me in my music? Well, let's start on that one. I mean, you got to think about your triad level and your seventh chord level. When it comes to the triads, of course, we've got the predominant ones would be major and minor, and I would say the next most important would be diminished. You can try and mess around a little bit with augmented, although I don't know how much you'd really use it. I mean, it's good to try them, but I mean, you're dealing with thirds, you know, all major thirds there. So it's kind of a sound that might operate okay once in a while for certain things for creating tension, but remember, augmented is not part of standard harmony, so it's not going to be in your major scales and minor scales or any of your modes. It's kind of a unique sound. It's based and built more or less out of the whole tone scale, so it's kind of unique. But diminish will be really well used, because diminish will also be a part of dominant sevenths, which kind of brings us to this realm of these seventh chord arpeggios as well. So I really think it would be good to learn some major 7, minor 7, of course dominant 7th, the minor 7 flat 5. And what you might want to do, I'll just give you a quick demo maybe with a major 7, which is something that I quite like. Let's say if we used A, for instance, I have G sharp to A here, and then I can go C sharp to E, and then I have my other G sharp up here. And, you know, I could maybe get a little bit better sound of that if I wasn't on such low bass strings. Maybe if I go to the 4th string, I have my G sharp A, and then up here to the high G sharp. So it's a very cool sound, and you add a bit of distortion, you have lots of sustain, and you can work those out as well with the minors and minor 7s, and you can do them with dominants as well. The fingerings change, and you may want to work on them off of, let's say, 6th string root. I did one off of 4th string root. Of course, you'll have one up here as well, off of the 2nd and 1st strings. So you'll find they're sort of in 2-string clusters. It'll require you to have a really good tap when you cross over to the next string, because you'll be doing that with nothing but the attack of the left hand. So you want to work on that a little bit as well. So all that stuff, really, all your standard harmony levels, you'll want to make a job out of practicing those. And for your second part of your question, you're asking about should I make sure that all my arpeggio patterns are loopable? Well, you got to remember too, sure, some of them are loopable, and you look at some of the Kirk Hammett stuff. You look at maybe the solo from Crazy Train. Some of those kinds of patterns which go in a loop, and you could hear that one starting again. So those are kind of neat sounds, when you go through a loop on them. But one thing that you didn't mention, because looping has a lot to do with composing, if you're writing a part, I mean, the part may loop, the part may move along to some other part of the scale structure. So you may think a little bit modally, which also brings us into the realms of scales. I'm not sure if you practice your tapping along through the notes of a scale, but you could take a 2-note idea. And do sort of along the neck idea, tapping along through a couple of notes, and you could even try to work it out with 3 notes, and kind of come along, maybe create a pattern with the left hand, and then move along the neck, and do some kind of a really well worked out sequence. I mean, Paul Gilbert really did a nice worked out sequence at the beginning of, I think the song is called Green Tinted 60s Eyes. It's a old Mr. Big tune. So maybe learn some stuff like that, where it's really composed parts, and I think you'll get a lot out of that approach. I think out of anything with tapping, more so than just total, instruction from anyone. I think I learned the most about tapping through basically learning people's tapping parts, so learning, originally that probably would have been starting with Randy Rhoads and then, maybe some of the other 80s shredder guys. And I guess, you look at Paul Gilbert, there's a great inspiration. And of course, you can't really mention tapping without mentioning Jennifer Batton. She's a fantastic tapper. She's got a lot of really interesting ideas. If you can sort of sift through some of her instructional stuff on tapping, it's fantastic. She's really taken it to a whole other level. She's got some super cool ideas that she's worked out. So I believe that she actually wrote a book on tapping, and I can just remember in the early days of being at GIT, they had her book at the bookstore there. And then there was another guy that was coming in and doing clinics at GIT that was quite interesting too. His name was Dave Celentano. So maybe check out some of his stuff. Perhaps I'll hit Amazon, find some links, and pop them into the description box below so you can check out some of these books that these guys are writing. Anyway, let's head over to the next question. And this one, the last one I have time for, is from Isaac. He's out in Burnaby, BC. He wrote in here, I'm an acoustic guitar player. I've been playing guitar for maybe 2 years now. So you're a relatively new player, but only getting started into theory within the last week. I want to learn to play like Andy McKee, Antoine Defer, etc., the percussive guitar style. Where would I start in theory to learn to play like them? I really need help. I have no idea where to go to, and I'm overwhelmed by the amount of lessons on the internet. Okay, so, well, thanks for the question, Isaac. It's only maybe in the last 3 or 4 years that I've been introduced to some of these guys like Andy McKee, who is a brilliant guitar player. Antoine Defer, I'm only a little bit familiar with this stuff. I've tried some of it. I mean, these are people that are using a lot of alternate tunings, you have to realize. But years ago, I did have the opportunity on a number of occasions to meet up with Don Ross, who, if you are into these guys, you probably know who Don Ross is. He's a Canadian guitar player. I believe he's either based out of Toronto or Vancouver now. Fantastic player, and I got a chance many times to ask him a lot of questions. So these players tend to play by way of intervals because their guitars are tuned into different tunings. So what I mean by that is when their guitar is retuned, now of course my guitar is in standard tuning, so it's kind of a bad example now, but well, I guess not. Maybe I can show you what I mean. Let's say you had an interval, on a standard tuning of a major 6. So what you would be doing is when your guitar is retuned, you would find out what the new look of major 6 is, and you go into that shape, and you're building chords based around those new interval designs. Now, the thing about these guys is they tend to also have a pretty seriously heavy background in classical guitar. I know that Don Ross went to, I believe, University of Toronto, and he's a real masterful fingerstylist. He does play heavily in the direction of that percussive technique, but you have to realize that there's initial training in fingerstyle and a lot of theory that these people have done beforehand, and of course there's years upon years upon years of work. So my advice to you in getting into this kind of style would be develop a practice plan that's based around starting with easier folk and also classical pieces. You can go on a site like Ultimate Guitar and download some basic pieces, find some fingerstyle versions. I know there's all kinds out there for Beatles tunes, and there's fingerstyle versions, of course, for all the classical pieces. You can find some of the classic wedding pieces like Pachelbel's Canon, and there's just loads and loads of them out there to try Ode to Joy and all this stuff. But build your technique with your fingerstyle ability. If you like some of those old pieces that are real driving, repetitive phrases like maybe Dust in the Wind or something, of course, if you like rock, check out something like Stairway to Heaven. And all that, there's some stuff by the Eagles you could try. So, check out all of the popular stuff that's more mainstream. Check out the classical stuff. Get into some folk stuff. Try, of course, composing some of your own parts. Get really involved with understanding alternate tunings. Tune your guitar to a G chord. Tune your guitar to a D. Tune it to something real bizarre like A major or something like F sharp minor. Try lots of work with capos once you do redo your tuning. Now, it just came to mind to me as well, one of the tunes that I have looked at with students is a piece by Andy McKee called Rylene, and I believe that has a very different tuning as well as sort of a half capo. So he's got some strings capoed and then other strings are open. Now, you can tell just by the brief conversation that I'm getting into, there is just an enormous amount to the direction of this, and it's almost essentially staggering. It will literally take anyone, even who has a decent level of skill on the instrument, probably a long time to be able to play like a guitarist, let's say like Don Ross or Andy McKee. These people have extraordinary ability in this direction, and they have worked incredibly hard, obviously, to develop their skills, both theoretically, so they're seeing the guitar in a very manageable way for themselves on the alternate tunings, very intervallically, and you know their theory level is at a very high, pace. So I mean, there's a lot to do on this style, and I think even learning different pieces that I had mentioned, and of course, you know, getting into, if you have a favorite player, like, let's say you really enjoy Andy McKee, most definitely learn some of his music. You know, get involved in going on the internet, finding some charts, and if you have to even purchase the charts, purchase them then, and start going through them and getting a handle on what's going on with that stuff, because it is very involved, and it's going to take a heck of a long time to develop that type of style. And I would also suggest some time well spent with both a very good folk fingerstyle player, if you can find one in your community that's doing some teaching, as well as take some classical guitar lessons, because you'll pick up on some really good chops, building techniques and exercises that way. So anyway, hopefully that helps you out. Hopefully those answers help out a lot of folks out there. And I do have to wrap it up. I've got a busy weekend. I got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm going to head off now. But I just want to say thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in as usual. And I'll catch up with you on the next video that I do for the Guitar Blog series. And until next time, take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.